What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And before I introduce formally today's guest, Grant Johnson has been in the agency world since 1989. And if anyone knows or listens, I geek out on direct response marketing. So I've had some amazing people on. So Grant, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out. And so from the direct response world, I had Ron Popeil on. People should check out that interview. And unfortunately, may rest in peace. He died recently. I've had Brian Kurtz on. I've had, you name it, just like hundreds of people on. And also from the agency side, I've had people like Gray McKenzie of ZenPilot, who specialize in helping agencies move on to ClickUp. John Doherty of Credo, which connects companies to the right agencies for their needs. John Morris, his story was amazing. He built his agency up to 200 people, then sold it, now consults with companies to help them grow. So check out that and many more. And the episode today is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. Grant, for me, you've probably found out by now, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my relationships and profile them, their company, what they're doing, the exciting things that they're working on. And I've found no better way over the past decade to do that than to have them on my podcast. So if you've thought about it, go to rise25.com, check out more. You could email us at support@rise25media.com. We're happy to answer any and all questions that you have. And today's guest, I'm excited, Grant Johnson's the CEO and founder of Responsory. And like I mentioned, he started in 1999, but he was in the agency world since 1988. And when people ask what he does, Grant says, I'm a drug dealer. I was reading that on LinkedIn. It says drug dealer, a true great direct response marketer, because it captures your curiosity. So you have to read more. So he's done stuff in pharma, vitamins, nutraceuticals. He says, I'm an insurance salesperson, which is not quite as compelling as saying I'm a drug dealer, but health, specialty, and life insurance. He sells chemicals and a myriad of B2B products, manufacturing services. They work with companies like Humana, Northwestern Mutual, Microsoft, Blue Cross Blue Shield in various states, and many, many more companies over the years. And their process combines data, AI, and testing to deliver multi-channel marketing campaigns to make their clients a hero and ultimately get them ROI. So Grant, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I wanted you to start with talking about Imet. When I look at your website, Imet keeps sticking out. And I encourage anyone to go to responsory.com and some of the work you've done. And there's this image of this person in a cage with a shark coming up to them. So I love that image. And it talks about 4 essential B2B email marketing tactics in action. You've been doing email marketing for years and years and years.
Yes.
So talk about what Imet Vision Care in some email marketing.
Yeah, so Imet is the insurance arm of Luxottica, and a lot of people know Luxottica, but they don't know Luxottica. Luxottica is Ray-Ban sunglasses. It is just about every optical chain you can think of. Target Optical. They own so many brands, it's crazy. But on the B2B side, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get companies to understand that Imet has an insurance product. It's a good product. They should look at it. They should consider at least getting a quote from Imet. And we deal with HR decision makers who handle benefits. We actually deal with agents and brokers as well. And one thing, not this one that's in particular that's up, but the very first campaign they gave us, which was really, I think it's an interesting B2B case study, which is they said to us, okay, you guys do measurable marketing. Why don't you Here's a list of 900 prospects. We know these prospects are doing business with our competitors. We have never, ever been able to quote with them, let alone meet with them. So they said, get us appointments. And I said to the client contact, I said, oh man, I thought you liked me. This is the first assignment you're giving us. And what we ended up
Yeah, we'd
doing,
never be able to crack this code.
yeah,
Grant, good luck.
but you can.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was, again, I think it's a really good case study. Of course, I'm biased, but it's a good case study on thinking through how marketing and sales have to align. So what we ended up doing was we did a little bit of research, of course, and our cadence was really email, banner ads, prior, dimensional direct mail, more banner ads, more emails, and then of course there was an option for a gift or an offer. And what we offered at that point was an Echo Dot, and at that point they were like 79 or 99 bucks, and they were brand new, they were hot, all that kind of good stuff. And we sat down and said, how do we make this, if we get appointments, how do we make this an event rather than just another sales call? Because of course, some people are going to say, yeah, come on, I'll spend 15 minutes with you. I get this new toy, so what? So what we ended up doing, and this was several years ago, is we did an Alexa app with it. So what we did is we had the salesperson come in and say, hey, we've been having troubles with these. Can we plug it in and make sure it works? And I think they just took it down. But if you would say, Alexa, enable Imet, then what would happen is they go through this whole not sales pitch, but welcome to Imet. Here's who we are. Here's how many people we insure. And of course, what ended up happening, which is what we had hoped for, was the person who was going to get this dot said, wait, I got to get some other people to come in and see this. And even though that technology has been around for a long time, I think people
That's still a cool trick. I mean, even if you did that.
Yeah. And, and a lot of people just don't, they don't think through the process, but it's really creative. And also, by the way, it's great for the salesperson. It takes some stress off them. Yeah. The Alexa is doing the talking at that moment. So that's fantastic. 15% response. Yeah.
I love it.
Sold a lot of policies. So yeah, it worked. But again, I think that's the kind of thing that, most people can do fancy creative. They don't test enough, that kind of stuff. But really, if you think through that sales cycle and how you can make that from ordinary to extraordinary, that face-to-face meeting, even a Zoom call like this, that'll really bode well for you and your chances of success, in my mind.
I love that thinking, Grant, because it's not just optimized, it's optimizing the whole process. So it's like, you're not like, oh, it stops when we get the appointment. That's when it actually begins. And that's actually when people are like, cool, we got the appointment. And how do you optimize that piece of the process? And so I'm curious from you obviously take a multi-channel approach to get in the room, to put that offer in front of them, and then deliver this amazing kind of cool presentation and event. What I gravitate towards, I hear all this stuff, but I hear dimensional direct mail, and that's where my mind goes, because I love hearing about what are some cool examples, maybe in this case, that you sent out, or even across other campaigns, because I think the art of that, we're so used to getting bombarded with email and all this stuff, and you could stick out from the crowd with that, but I just love dimensional direct mail.
Yeah, I can tell you one. And again, this is going to seem crazy, but again, it's B2B. So on B2B, you can spend a lot more money on a prospect. Your cost per lead can be very high if the close rate is there as well, right? So again, things you have to factor in. So we had a bank that was it was a Wisconsin-based bank that was trying to penetrate the business side of companies in Chicago. And if anybody's worked in any major city, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, LA, media costs are just ridiculous. So they came to us and said, we can afford a really nice gift. So you guys come back with something that you think is going to, really work. So what we had at that time was there was this little device, and if you would turn the device on any hard surface, it would create a keyboard. And it was just a little device, and it's pretty cool. And so that was part of the dimensional direct mail that came. And then, believe it or not, if they would set up an appointment with a banker, they would get an iPad. We would bring an iPad to them. And people are like, oh, great case study. Of course, it's going to be successful. Well, not necessarily, because these are busy people. They can buy their own iPads if they want. They really don't need them. But it's a really good example of people going, wow, this is a really cool thing. Now, the one thing I always caution about dimensional mail and any type of offer you make is, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. If I'm selling you a Mont Blanc pen and say, hey, you buy this Mont Blanc pen and you get a Jaguar, I don't think many people are going to respond, because they're going to go, yeah, really? It'd probably be a Matchbox or a Hot Wheels Jaguar.
Right. What's the catch?
Yeah, exactly. What's the catch? And people are skeptical. They're even more skeptical today. But again, a lot of this stuff can be proved or disproved through testing. And I'm going to just jump in for a second. A really good example, again, that I see all the time in B2B that's not done is just basic segmentation. I don't have to treat everybody as homogeneous, or I shouldn't actually, because what the CEO is thinking is different what the technology person is thinking is different than what the operations and what the finance person is thinking. So just by simple segmentation, you'll have more success. And I would say well over 90% of the campaigns that we're invited into, they are not doing basic segmentation. They're not doing testing. If they're driving them to a landing page, which of course we highly recommend, they're not testing that. That's when the sale really begins, because I'm clicking and going, all right, Dr. Jeremy, you're saying, okay, I'm interested. And then people just think, okay, I'm just going to tell you all about myself. But that's when the selling really needs to kick in. And, a lot of people forget that. And those are a couple things that I would recommend everybody at least think about, because they'll increase your success.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things you talk about also in the Imet example with 4 essential B2B email marketing tactics is like, one, you're targeting, you're segmenting it so then you can personalize things and you can make a compelling offer to them. I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about, you talk about in their conversion driving landing pages.
Yeah. So conversion driving landing pages, again, there's a process or a template that we follow, which I'm happy to share with anybody if they reach out to me after hearing this. But really what has to happen there is, it's like, I'm trying to give an analogy. If you make a phone call in the old days because you like something off an 800 number, don't just assume I want to buy this. They always try to upsell you and that kind of stuff. But the landing pages, what happens there is, reiterate the offer is one thing I always say. If there's an offer or a compelling reason I'm clicking on, if it's a white paper, if it's a possible gift, restate why that person clicked on there. And then, the other, so that's one thing. And then you have an option to test all sorts of different landing pages. Here. So personalization, compelling offer, and call to action. Personalization is really important. Now, a lot of people always ask me about pearls, and pearls are okay, but if you know too much and you pre-populate with too much, it becomes a little creepy. So you have to be really...
Yeah, for people who don't know what pearls are, it's like a personalized URL, right? So like Correct. If you send someone something in the mail and they click on it, it's like, you go to it and it says something about responsoring, if it's to you, grant and responsory, they'll go and it has your stuff on there, which is kind of a cool little trick.
Yeah. So, and again, so just, very test centric. And then, again, a compelling offer and call to action. That's what got them to click. So once they're on that landing page, like you see in this example here, you got the first name, Jeremy. How valuable is your employee data? And it, goes into, some statistics and that kind of stuff. You got the box on the right. And, as far as the statement and then infographic, things like that. So this is a good example. I believe there was one or two others we tested along with this, but this was the winner. And there's another email, another one. Yeah. So
I'm curious, Grant, from this, what I love about this also is that the imagery is really cool. So I talk about your thought process and brainstorming of the team of coming up with, it just jumps out at you. You want to look and see what's going on, and you totally get what the company does, from, I'm amongst bees and like how protected you feel, and I'm amongst sharks in a cage. So how did you come up with that, or test different images, or maybe you tested a few and you came up with this? I'd love to hear that.
We obviously we sit down, we have a brainstorming session. We try to come up with a theme. And in this case, it was obviously had to do with animals and insect theme, and what we were trying to do is figure out how we could make it compelling, how we could make people stop. And we decided rather than a photo, use this animation tactic. And again, if you look at your email, you don't see many emails like this in your inbox. You just don't. And the image and the headline really have to just drive you into that copy. And again, I really want to reiterate that the creative, the design, it really needs, just like you said, Jeremy, pull me in. But then direct response copy is much different than traditional ad copy, right? And one of the things that I do when I consult with people is I take their homepage, or in this case, an example, and then I look at how many times they mention themselves versus you. So I want to know what's in it for me. Tell me what you're going to solve. Remind me of why I clicked on, things like that. And if it's not 2-to-1 that you're talking about the prospect, rewrite your copy. Because, there's an assumption at this point after I clicked on that I know who you are. I believe that you're a credible company. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have clicked on this. So now it becomes, okay, what's in it for me? What problem are you going to solve? How are you going to help me? Why are you different than somebody else that I may have already? So again, I just think it's like you had alluded to earlier, it's just that direct marketing mindset. So keeping in mind that the creative is designed to pull people in. And we came up with, I think we probably presented 4 to 6 options. And then we always have a rationale behind each option. It's not like, hey, here's an idea. What do you think of it? We have to explain the rationale behind what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're doing it. And honestly, I cannot tell you how many CEOs that I presented to in my career that said, well, we really don't like this. And my response is, I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
I don't care. And they go, what do you mean? I'm paying your bills. I said, well, you're not our target audience. If you are our target audience, yeah, I'm not dismissing, your industry, but I'm not trying to sell to you. I'm trying to sell to the prospect. And their mindset is probably a little different than you, Mr. CEO, right? And those are things to keep in mind. And then again, when you think about segmentation, content that's engaging is going to relate to what they do in their job function. Years ago, we did we were selling financial conversion software. So most financial institutions run Fiserv or some sort of software package that ties everything together. And what we did there was, again, this is heavy direct mail years ago, but what we ended up doing was we told the CEO what holistically this was going to mean. We told the technology officer how easy the integration was going to be. We talked to the CEO about what the payoff was going to be. We talked to the marketing prospect about how they could really differentiate themselves versus other competitors in the market. And in my mind at that time, it's like, okay, everybody comes into this big conference room and they say, okay, we have to talk about the software needs we have. Lo and behold, the CFO says, hey, I found this company that's already told me what the return could be. And then they start talking, and then they all figure out, hey, this is from the same company.
Mm.
And it's speaking their language. So in that case, we're reaffirming that we know it's a big step to make this investment. We also know it's going to be tedious and there might be some problems along the way, but we understand what those are because we've done this enough. And that alone is going to differentiate, in that case, them. And even to this day, which is 15, 20 years later, people still aren't doing enough of that segmentation. And why is it valuable or important to me?
Yeah, I love that because everyone has their own wants and needs, even for the same product. I'd love to hear, Grant, too. I know you have known some of the top direct response marketers of all time and learned with them, from them. Who are some of your favorites, maybe that are still around today, and maybe something you learned from them?
Well, I'll start with the people that aren't around. I was fortunate. And pretty young and naive and stupid. Dick Benson, who's one of the fathers of testing, direct marketing testing. I didn't meet him per se in person, but I talked to him on the phone a few times. And I was arguing with him about a product I was selling. And he said, well, you called me and you can argue with me all you want, but it's not going to work. And I said, I'm going to prove Dick Benson wrong. But guess what? Dick Benson was correct. So him, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Bob Stone, those are some of the folks, Rocket Ray Judkins, that I got to know. Brian Kurtz is an outstanding direct marketer, somebody I've known for several years. He runs the Titan program, just a really, really bright guy who has a passion for measurability. Alan Rosenspan, one of my favorite direct marketers of all time, just a really smart guy who understands that testing and fortitude are really what's important. And interestingly enough, we had what they call a grand control, which sells like millions or hundreds of millions of products in the direct mail realm. And they actually hired Alan to beat our package. And I think he said it took 5 or 6 or 7 goes at it. So that was a compliment in a way, But yeah, so those are a couple off the top of my head. And anybody that practices smart direct marketing, understanding some of the basics.
Yeah.
Those are folks that I really, and I meet folks on a weekly or monthly basis who I didn't know. For instance, you, Jeremy, I was, like I said at the beginning when we were talking prior to going live, I'm shocked we haven't met each other over these years. I just a
lot of mutual connections. Brian Kurtz is amazing in his book Over Deliver, and I have interviewed Herschel Gordon Lewis. And then I'm curious what resources you recommend. Someone listening is like, I believe direct response is really the foundation of everything. And, like you mentioned, the picture, like what we're looking at here, the goal of that is to draw you in, to read the headline. And like one of my favorites is Joe Sugarman's book, where he just breaks it down so simply, which is like, what's the goal of the headline? To get you the subhead. What's the goal of the subhead? To get you the first sentence. What's the goal of the first second sentence? So I'd love to hear some of your favorite resources out for people who want more.
Yeah, I'm going to digress just for a second.
Go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things very early on, you're talking about Joe Sugarman, and I'm so glad you brought up his name. So he used to have a product called Blue Blocker sunglasses.
Totally.
Yeah. Back in the day, they used to run infomercials live. Okay, so they're on the camera, and Joe's holding this with the host, and he says, these are so good, we're going to send you 2 pair, and they're virtually indestructible. And he says, watch this, and he drops a pair of the sunglasses off, and it snaps at the temple, and he picks it up and he goes, now That's why we give you 2 pair. And by the way, if it does break, it's going to break here. And we'll give you a new one absolutely without skipping a beat. And I was like, that's impressive. And if you talk to him again, I mean, ask him about that story. I think that's pretty cool. David Ogilvy, who is, a lot of people consider him the king of advertising. He called direct mail his secret weapon. So, looking at anything that Ogilvy may have wrote on direct marketing, direct mail, that's a really, really good resource. Subscribing to blogs and podcasts like you have, those are good resources. I'm probably going to start at some point a podcast, not that everybody should listen to me, but there's just so much information. I'm in my office here, and the whole suite here we're in, I probably have 1,000 books. A lot on direct marketing.
Yeah.
Very, very many on direct marketing. But yeah, so I would say looking at not only marketing books but sales books, and how to weave that sales message into what you're doing. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. They have a really good website and some resources that you can look into as well. And understanding copy from a sales and a marketing perspective. There's a book that actually Boardroom, where Brian used to work, Brian Kurtz. It was called Secrets of Super Selling by I can't think of the guy's name right now. But anyway, one of the things in there that was really interesting to me was when you're talking to somebody and you say, I hear what you say. Do you hear what I'm saying? And I say, yeah, I think I see what you're saying. Well, that's the wrong response, because you're using the cue of hearing. So I should say, yes, Jeremy, I understand. I hear what you're saying. And I know that sounds small, but again, that's one of those things that people
feel understood.
Yeah, I can relate.
Is this the one, Grant? Is it this one?
That's
John J.
right
McCarthy's Secrets of Super Selling?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that's a great book. Buy it.
It's amazing with these, like, just treasure trove. It's $9.53. It's just inexpensive.
Yeah, there's actually something. There's a guy named Ed McLean who wrote a whole series of he called them monologues on testing, and I tried for years to find a copy of the monologue, and I finally found one copy. And believe it or not, it was in a library about 20 minutes from where I'm sitting.
Wow.
It was a college library. So I asked them if I could buy it, and they said no. So I just made a bunch of copies. And
exactly.
Ed McLean, The Basics of Testing. And you probably can find it online. Think and Grow Rich, great book to read. That super selling book. Again, so many resources. Bob Stone's Successful Secrets of Direct Marketing is a textbook. I taught direct marketing at the MBA level for about 15 years at Concordia University, Wisconsin, and that was the book that we used. And then Ruth Stevens, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a good B2B marketer that does some good things. And again, there's a lot of resources, and I'll follow up with a list maybe that you could include at some point for me after this. Yeah.
I love it. And I want to talk about for a second, we'll go on the other end of the spectrum, I think, from dimensional mail, direct response, like mailing actual, stuff in your physical. We'll talk about AI, because you've been using AI for over a decade. But before we get to that, I'd love for you to walk through. I have pulled up here, if you are listening to it, and you can watch the video as well. I'm looking at the website, Coxado, and talking about Coxado and what you did with them.
Yeah, so Coxado is part of a English, based in London, a company called Hikma Pharmaceuticals. And we have a process that we follow, which we might get into later, and I'll tie that into a story with Hikma. But Coxado was just launched. It was actually just launched last week, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
And this is a campaign I'm very, very proud of. It's B2B and some B2C, but mainly B2B, going to EMTs, firefighters, police, schools, any place that may have a need if somebody overdoses. What this does is a single shot nasal spray that will save their lives.
And if you're not watching the video, there's a picture there. It says break glass in case of overdose, and there's a picture of the actual product. I mean, the actual product is in the box there.
Yeah. So again, just a campaign that is really close to me, because not who they are or anything like that. It's because it's a product that's needed. It's going to save lives. I'm very proud of this. We're doing all their digital advertising. We did the website. We're going to do all their banner ads, email, so on and so forth. As things pop up, we work with more and more things with Hikma and Coxado. But again, just a really cool product that we think is going to have a huge impact. It's already gotten international play. And once the marketing really kicks in the next month or two here, I think you're going to see some pretty cool results.
So for them, talk about the B2B component. So and what, because there's probably a lot of use cases for it. How do you decide who to go after and who to prioritize, and who do you end up targeting?
That's a wonderful question. I'm glad you asked that. So it always starts with fact-based analysis or research. And a lot of times people come to me and say, okay, you're an expert on direct marketing. What would you do? And I say, I don't know. I have to have the data tell me the story. And they're like, well, I thought you knew what you were doing. And I'm like, we need to do the fact-based analysis, because I'll come in with a prejudiced idea, and that's not what we want. So in the case of Coxado, don't quote me on this, but I think there's like 37 or 57 zip codes in the whole United States that make up like 80 to 90% of all overdose deaths. So you start there. You start going, okay.
It's like direct response meets 80-20.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we said, okay, these are the zip codes. Well, just to keep it simple, we'll just say, okay, there's 25 zip codes. What we need to find in those 25 zip codes is superintendents of schools, principals of schools, police stations that are in the area, EMT and firefighters that are in the area. And, it goes on and on and on. Target audiences as we rank them from top to bottom as far as who needs it. And then reaching out to them in a sophisticated manner that includes using AI with targeted banner ads, dimensional direct mail, things along those lines. So it's all about the data. And as a direct marketer, it's always been about the data. But now, as everybody demands, I won't say wants, demands measurability in their marketing, those who understand data and testing are the ones that are going to succeed. And I'm pretty proud to say I'm part of this launch.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty, it's that approach is pretty interesting, because you can go anywhere with this, but then you kind of segment in the data, go, where's the zip codes in the US that have this stuff going on? And then where within those zip codes, where is this stuff happening? And those are it makes perfect sense when you lay it out like that, but it's not so obvious from the beginning. And
I mean, sometimes people forget the basics of direct mail. And I'm going to use a term that I would say the majority of the audience won't understand. And I could be wrong. Hopefully I am. Census tracts. So what happens in a zip code is you can break down a zip code into the 5-digit zip code, the zip +4, the 9-digit zip code to get it smaller. But if you even want to get smaller than that, there's census tracts, which within that zip +4, there might be 100 of them. And we might be only interested in 30 of the 100. And that's what Uber targeting is about. Understanding and knowing how to use data, where to use data, what what are the assets and limitations of data become critical, not only for everything that we do as far as measurable marketers and direct marketers, but really for any marketing going forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. What about so we mentioned AI. You mentioned it briefly about how you used it with this. Talk about how you've been using it
Okay.
over the
Yeah.
past 10 years and now.
Yeah. So we have a partner with a patented software program. And what the software does is it actually gets smarter and smarter as you move forward. So the problem that exists when you're explaining this to people is they think of a traditional media buy. I want to reach females 25 to 54. Well, what this does is, let's say we use that as a starting gauge. And what this does is it gets more finite, more finite, more finite as it continues to move, and figures out who's clicking, who's converting, who's buying. Okay. And a really good example is Zondervan Publishing, which is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They print just about every kind of Bible you can imagine. And they came to us and they had 3 Bibles they wanted to market. One was the college Bible, kids that were going off to college. The leadership Bible, which was really more for groups getting together and studying things like that, as a group. And then my all-time favorite, the homeschool Mother Bible. And we said, okay, why don't you give us the data you have and we can start running these ads? And they said, we don't have any data. We just don't have the data because it's at retail and they don't share it with us. So like I said, using that 25 to 54, we started really broad, right? And then as we honed in, after about 2 or 3 weeks, we give them our first report. And we said, here's the first report. And it was something like 33-year-old rural mother of 3 with an income of X and X, and then all these other demographic and psychographic attributes. And they said, well, what is this? And we're like, these are the people who are buying your Bible. And they're like, we've never seen data like this. And what our system allows you to do is finite and really target in on that group. Now, there's some good and some bad with that. The good is, okay, this is who I think my audience is, but in reality, this is who it becomes. But if you still want to reach that other audience, you're not moving them. There's a reason that they're not responding, and that's where testing comes in. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to test a different set of headlines, a different offer, different copy, what have you. Try to test one thing at a time, and you move that way. And we always start with a set of 2 or 3 different approaches, and then we analyze. And it's not uncommon for one group to be responding to one set and another group to be responding to another. And that's how AI, again, like you said, we've been using it for over a dozen years. And a couple of years ago, people were like, AI and machine learning, oh, it's the greatest thing. And I'm like, well, you can hire Joe over at his agency who's learning on your dime, or you can hire somebody who's done dozens and dozens of these programs successfully. And I just think you had mentioned email. Everything from email forward is really direct marketing. Yep. And digital is a really good example as well. It started off, if you remember, oh, look at how cool this is. Look at all these great graphics we can do. But there was no sense of measurement, tracking, even though it was in there. Now that's becoming a must. If you can't track it and you can't measure it, why do it?
I want to go through a little bit, Grant, about this direct branding methodology. But before we do, I'm just curious. So you look at Coxado, they are an international company. I'm curious how they found you in Wisconsin.
Okay, that's a good question. So we do a lot of insurance work as well. And we did work with, I think, 5 of the Obamacare co-ops, ACA work. And one of our clients was a lady who was at InHealth Ohio, which was the co-op set up in Columbus, Ohio. And initially we went to talk to them, and they said, well, you're saying the exact same thing that somebody else is saying, that's local, all things being equal, we're going to go local. Yeah, that's fine. I get it. A year later, they call us and said, well, that whole list that they promised, we got nothing. So we come in, we do a campaign with them, and in 8 weeks, I think we picked up, it was about 20,000 new members in 8 weeks. And now these aren't responses. These are people who actually sign up and become members for the insurance. So because the funding got cut off, again, that gets into a whole nother can of worms. Most of the co-ops went out of business. So when we went in for an exit interview with our client, she said, you know what? I've worked with a lot of firms. You guys did what you said you're going to do. You got results. You proved the results. So when I get a new job, I'm going to bring you in if at all possible. So she left InHealth Ohio because they shut down, and she went to HICMA. At that time, it was called Westward Pharmaceuticals. And after about 6 or 8 months there, she says, come down to Columbus and meet with my boss. So we meet with him, and he says, well, I'm in a quandary. I'm with an agency in New York. I don't like them. And you have no pharma experience. You have nutraceutical, vitamins, but that's not pharma. Okay. So I said, well, we have this methodology. And he asked, I thought, a really smart question. He said, okay, what would you do if you were me? And I said, well, my understanding is the agency you're with in New York, you don't like. He said, no, I can't stand them. I said, okay. Give me 6 months. We'll implement this process. If after 6 months things don't work out, we will turn everything over. You can start with a clean slate. You can hire whoever the heck you want, and we'll say we gave it the best try we could. And that was about 12 or 13 drugs ago. So obviously, our stuff is working, and just like anything, it boils down to relationships and somebody, really rooting for you or pushing you. And everybody has a process, but this is really the process that we follow, which is, like I said earlier, let the data tell the story, fact-based. This is what the data is telling us. And again, I can tell you many times people are like, that can't be right. That's not what we know. Well, I'm just telling you what the data says.
Yeah.
So either you're successful, or we're missing somebody, or there's a big opportunity that we should look to explore.
Yeah. I love to have you walk through the process briefly. And then I was talking, funny you say that, Grant, to Diana Freik, who runs Retail Voodoo. She's got a great podcast, the Gooder podcast. We were talking about this exact thing, which is they help CPG companies, and it's like someone, they get all these requests. Well, have you helped a popcorn company in rural Iowa? Well, no, but we have this methodology, right? And it's about the strategy methodology that this can work across, even if you don't have specific experience in pharma or whatever it is, like there is this process. So if you could walk me through a little bit about the, and if you're watching the video, you can see, I just pulled up in front of me a bit about the direct branding process, and just kind of highlight a few things here. That'd be great.
Yeah. So again, it starts with fact-based analysis. It looks at everything from market conditions, what the future market is supposed to look like based on facts, what your competitors are doing, how they're doing it, all that kind of stuff. And it's laid out here right in front of us. It's really about intelligence, right? It's about having the data tell us what's going on, primary, secondary research. Sometimes we do messaging workshops. Sometimes we do personas. It depends on the engagement, the size, and of course, the time that we have in order to do things. But once we get through that fact-based analysis, then we start the branding and marketing strategies, which is really understanding, like in Imet, understanding what's the messaging we're gonna go out with. What's the rationale behind what we're going to do? Who are we going to market to? How do they look different? what does the persona look like? And again, just if you don't have time or money to do personas per se, just look at their titles and figure out, what their day-to-day activity is. Some of it is common sense. And then, we go into the execution really after that, which is building the program components. Now, one of the things I really want to touch on is if you look at building program components, and if you go up just to the earlier one, Jeremy, branding, most of my competitors flip that. So they'll say, oh, I know what you need. You need email, or you need trade shows, and I'm like, no, we need to understand, we need to figure out the strategy and then tactics and then how we're going to implement them. And again, it seems like it should follow this process, but I promise most of them will say, here's what we do and this is what you need to do. But that doesn't mean necessarily it's what you should do. So I think that's an important distinction. So you build the program components, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. You do the creative brief, you present concepts, you walk through the concepts with the client, you agree, then you start the copywriting, which is very, very critical. And, you go from there, and then you execute and test. And then you just keep testing in that circle. So the track and measure. So if you don't track and measure, you can't do it, but this is a continuous loop. And what works today might not work in 3 months. Does the weather stay the same outside? No. Do gas prices stay the same? No. Things like that. And that's why you always have to be in this continuous improvement loop, because things change and competitors come, they go. Some competitors might think, okay, I'm going to get more aggressive and really start to steal market share. Are you prepared for that? And if you do constant testing, you're going to be 2 steps ahead of them. They can come in, but you're going to be like, we knew that a year ago. And you can continue to grow.
Grant, first of all, thank you. I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone, check out responsory.com, learn more, check out more episodes of the podcast, and Grant will be the first one. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like $100 grand.